Now we start from U.S.-China. U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed optimism about reaching a series of agreements with Chinese President Xi Jinping during their upcoming meeting in South Korea. Speaking from the Oval Office, Trump has stated that a deal was likely on a variety of issues. Let's listen in.
In South Korea, I'll be meeting with President Xi of China. We'll have a pretty long meeting scheduled. We can work out a lot of our questions and our doubts and our tremendous assets together. So we look forward to that. I think something will work out. We have a very good relationship, but that'll be a big one. I think we'll make a deal. I think we're going to make a deal on the rare earth is the least of it. Look, the tariffs are much more powerful than the rare earth. The rare earth is a disturbance, but there's a lot of rare earth around. I'll tell you, I've had more calls on rare earth. We've got it. Everybody's. We'll make a deal on, I think, everything. I think we're going to make a deal on soybeans and the farmers.
President Trump has also intended to address China's purchases of Russian oil amid the ongoing war in Ukraine, as U.S. officials, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, are heading to Asia to resolve tensions over China's rare earth export restrictions. While trade talks are set to continue, Trump's administration is preparing further measures, including potential export restrictions on China. The Trump administration is considering new export restrictions targeting China. It is a move that could limit shipments of goods containing U.S. software. This proposed action is seen as a response to China's recent restrictions on rare earth exports, which are crucial for tech manufacturing. The measure could impact everything from laptops to jet engines by curbing global shipments of items made with or using U.S. software. While this plan is still under discussion, it could escalate tensions in the ongoing trade war. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has confirmed that all options are on the table, but acknowledged potential risks to U.S. industry. Meanwhile, China has warned it will take countermeasures if these controls are implemented. The proposal comes ahead of President Trump's planned meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping later this month. Now for this discussion, we welcome Andrew K.P. Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from Cairo. Thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us again. Good to see you. Andrew, now looking at this news now, U.S. has said that they could look into, or they could consider bringing U.S. softwares into these trade talks. How do you think this will affect the current relationship and upcoming summit if it were to take place between Xi and Trump?
Well, first of all, please don't refer to me as speaking from Cairo. I was there only on a cruise holiday, and I'm now back in Hong Kong, where I'm permanently based. You see, I'm the China strategist based in Hong Kong.
Sorry,
now, as far as the China-U.S. relation, it's a contest of power because under President Trump, the whole world's so-called rule-based order has been thrown out of the window. It's now the contest of power, of dominance. And of course, President Trump is past master of this game, the game of power. Now, he's now trying to use weaponizing the United States power as the world's largest economy. He's weaponizing the U.S. dollar. He's weaponizing the U.S. stranglehold over semiconductor chips. And he thought that all these power dynamics could defeat China's rights to become a challenger to American dominance. Now, of course, China's economy has been hard hit, including internal dynamics, declining demographics. But on the other hand, China still remains the world's largest exporting country by far, the largest world manufacturer of almost everything under the sun. And of course, the Chinese trade is much less dependent on the United States. It's only about 10%. So even if there is no trade with the United States at all, China's global trade and exports could still grow, as evidenced by the fact that during the past couple of months, China's overall exports has in fact increased, pivoting to Europe. And that's why the European countries, including Germany, have seen a large growth in China's trade and China's exports, and also in the global south. Now, as far as the software is concerned, China, of course, has long pivoted towards self-reliance on technology, including software. As evidenced by China's success in the AI sector, the DeepSeek, for example, is the latest China's invention. Uses its own, to a certain extent, its own software. But on the other hand, it still relies on American software to a large extent. But that alone doesn't prevent China from fast developing its own software, its own semiconductors, particularly semiconductors centered on AI, which is the whole new dynamics, as distinct from the kind of semiconductors based in the previous technologies. So I think this is the contest of power, and I think that both countries understand it. Both countries do not want to go to war because both countries are nuclear armed to the teeth, especially the United States, and for China with its hypersonic intercontinental weapons. So I don't think that both countries will ever want to go to war. But on the other hand, both are trying to test each other's resolve. And of course, in this kind of dynamics, they also seek areas of cooperation. For the United States, for President Trump, the most important dynamic is the coming up midterm elections. And a lot of electors are from the Americans' agricultural states. And they all depend on a large extent on soybeans export to China. For China, soybeans is not a rare commodity. China has been using that by pivoting its supply of soybeans by sourcing Brazil and other countries, and Russia, for example. So all the Chinese soybean orders have gone to these countries, to Brazil, to Russia, and other countries. And then President Trump's electors in these agricultural states supporting the Republican Party, they're all clamoring, they're all suffering. So I think that this translates into a possible deal between President Trump and President Xi. Each one has got to concede something, but I think that the United States may have to concede more than China in this regard.
Thank you very much, Andrew K.B. Long, for joining us from Hong Kong and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has confirmed that all options remain on the table regarding potential software export controls on China. These measures could include restrictions on software, engines, as well as other technologies. Moreover, any actions taken by the U.S. would likely align with its G7 allies. This comes after U.S. President Donald Trump recently announced plans to impose additional tariffs on Chinese shipments to the U.S. The U.S. president also stated that new export controls on critical software could take effect by November 1st, though no specifics were provided. These proposed measures are a response to China's recent restrictions on rare earth exports, which have further strained relations between the two nations. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, alongside U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, is set to meet with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng in Malaysia this week. This meeting is seen as a preparatory step ahead of the high-level talks between President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping, which is scheduled to take place in South Korea on the sidelines of the APEC Forum. Now for this discussion, we go back to Andrew K.B. Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Andrew, for staying with us.
Thank you.
Andrew, now what can G7 do to EU do to realistically think of countermeasuring these tariffs that would affect them as well. The U.S.'s tariffs on, including technology on China.
Well, the European Union, for the first time in many decades, is placed in a contrary because the European countries have, over many decades, relied on the United States as a main trading partner and a reliable partner in terms of maintaining a global order favorable to the Europeans' development and trajectory, and of course, allying with its values, with the ideology. But on the other hand, the Europeans are more open to investing in China, to doing business in China, because China has been, of course, as I explained, has become the world's largest trader by far. China is the main trading partner, is the largest trading partner, not just the main, of 128 countries around the world, compared with only 58 for the United States. And has now, of course, become the world's manufacturer by far, producing almost anything under the sun, apart from the its dominance in components and or logistics. Now, for the European Union, they want more Chinese investment, but on the other hand, they are wary about the security risk, but also they want to do business with China. Now, of course, China is now wising up to the strategy of not only trading or exporting to the European Unions, they are investing in production of the same kind of products inside the countries in the European Union or the rest of Europe in order to secure jobs for the host countries. And that would, of course, be welcomed by the Europeans. And the Europeans, of course, wants to form a relationship with China as a countermeasure by President Trump's unilateralism, also threatening the United States' traditional allies like Europe. On the one hand, President Trump called Europeans allies. On the other hand, he's imposing a lot of restrictions on Europe to just unilateral. I mean, it's not a measure against any other thing, because President Trump wants dominance, and he wants Americans getting all the benefits. And above all, he's trampling on the sovereignty of European allies, not just Canada, but also belittling countries like even Germany or France, and it's now dictating terms on how to deal with Russia. So I think that Europe is now trying to recalibrate its relationship with China, especially on trade and investments, and to a certain extent as a counterweight against President Trump's American First coercion.
Right. Andrew, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing that insight. Now we move on to our next news. EU Economy Commissioner Val